Darth Malgus is arguably the most well-known character from the Star Wars MMORPG, Star Wars: The Old Republic. But was he always meant to be this great character? I did some digging to figure out exactly what the developers had originally intended for Darth Malgus, and to answer these 4 questions. Was Darth Malgus always meant to be a mascot, or was he a real character the developers intended on exploring? How much of Darth Malgus's look was the SWTOR dev team and concept artists working for them, or Blur Studio, the team that put the original trailer together? How much of Darth Malgus is original, and how much of him is just reused, remixed Vader parts? And finally, did the Mascot Bet pay off? If you've seen anything related to Star Wars: The Old Republic, there's a really good chance you've seen Darth Malgus. He is featured in almost every loading screen, poster, and he is the first character we are introduced to in the original trailer. He is also the Collector's Edition's physical statue. Darth Malgus was first introduced in the trailer Deceived in July of 2009, 2 years before the novel written by Paul S. Kemp of the same name released, March 22nd, 2011. Now, Paul S. Kemp, in a Reddit AMA 15 years ago, said, "I had essentially no knowledge of the game at all when I wrote Deceived." Which means that at the time, Paul, when he wrote Deceived, had no idea what the SWTOR team was planning on doing with the character Darth Malgus, except for what was already being displayed in that trailer 2 years prior. Now, of course, the novel itself, if you've not read it, which is, you should read it, it's great. It provides more context and more detail to the events of that first trailer. This, to me, would imply that they didn't originally intend on Malgus being part of the game in a big way, as much as like his status as a mascot would lead you to believe. I would think that would mean that they were pivoting off the success of the novel and of just the character in general, you know, the popularity of the trailer. And that would be why he's not included necessarily in the base levels 1 through 50 story. Malgus was a major part of the prelude to the game, parentheses, the sacking of Coruscant and those things. But then during the actual course of the game, he disappears until he turns up again during Chapter 4 on Ilum.
I tried to contact you.
Malgus tried to kill us. Our guards stopped Darth Saravan's assassin, but they couldn't stop his bomb.
Which is effectively the epilogue of the base game before later expansions. Which, you know, by the end of Ilum, we think that we have defeated Darth Malgus as the player. So, once again, he's only in there for a flash. He's not a mainstay character. He's just in and out real quick, and he's gone again. Or so we thought. Another point that really backs up the idea of him being a mascot is if you actually look at the tie-in comics that came out in 2010 leading up to the game, which those comics, if you've not read them, again, I recommend them. They're great, they're fun. There are 6 issues, and they also explore the sacking of Coruscant and the Treaty of Coruscant and the deliberations on Alderaan, and introducing you to some characters that you will meet in the game. And guess who's not mentioned once in any of those? Darth Malgus. I mean, we have Barriss in those, we have Thanaton in those, we've got Brayden in those, we've got Orgus in those, you've got Satele in those, you've got Tavis. Major characters from the game, from the story, purposeful tie-in. And Malgus is nowhere to be seen. And, you know, this is another, you know, nothing here is concrete, nothing here is solid. It's hard to, unless they've come out and said it, which as far as I can tell, they've not. This at least to me indicates that they did not plan on using him at all in the game. Because I can't read minds, and as far as I can tell, it's not been explicitly stated by anyone directly related to the original dev team. This next section and a lot of the previous stuff that I've been talking about is just pure speculation and theory crafting. You know, like I said earlier, I would say that he was intended to be a mascot, just like Venzalo and Jace Malcolm and Nico Okar and these other characters that appeared in the trailers. These are all important characters. I'm not saying, you know, he's just a person on a wall. Like, all of those characters are extremely important as they set up the world and the story that we, the players, are inheriting. So they are extremely important, but they were not a major part of the player's story going forward. And I think that once the devs and BioWare and EA saw the success that they had with the character that they've created, Darth Malgus, they pivoted. They brought him in later, i.e. Ilum, and then years later, they bring him back again because he's popular. I think it's pretty safe to say, he was intended to be a mascot, and they pivoted and they changed that. While Blur Studio made the original cinematics, a Petrol 360 advertising agency did a lot of the concept art design work for different characters, including Darth Malgus. They also had in-house concept artists like Paul Adam and Arnie Jorgensen. I would guess that since the story and visuals took inspiration and reference to the comic runs Star Wars Tales of the Jedi in 1993 and 1994, that they used some of those illustrations as reference points, as well as some of the armor and gear from the games KOTOR and KOTOR 2, as well as the films. Once again, I'm speculating here, but it is next to impossible to really know exactly how split the responsibility was in terms of design. I think it's safe to assume that the studios Blur and Petrol, as well as the in-house folks, were not given tons of creative liberty due to the Star Wars IP being so iconic, but they were probably given a fair bit of execution liberty in terms of how things looked, like composition, lighting, and some smaller detail dressing. And a possible brief would include things like this. Now, let's jump to question 3 and let's talk about Darth Vader a little bit, okay? While not directly speaking to Darth Malgus' creation in the art and making of Star Wars The Old Republic, when talking about Sith Warrior armor set designs, which are extremely similar to Malgus' design, they specifically reference Darth Vader by saying, quote, "Many Sith Warrior designs are harrowing, machine-like permutations of Vader. Lots of hoods, capes, chest plates, and control boxes," end quote. And, quote, "The team explored other options by imagining Vader in a number of hypothetical scenarios, sans helmet, in full armor with cybernetic equipment replacing the quilted leather of his suit," end quote. They also specifically looked at the prequel Art of book when designing these sets, and I think this point definitely backs up the idea that they deliberately made Malgus look like Darth Vader. It would seem that the mascot bet paid off in terms of it has made an insanely popular character in Darth Malgus, and the launch of the game was extremely successful as well, seeing 1.7 million active subscribers in just 2 months, and a total of 2 million copies of the game sold. But I don't think the game has seen the most consistent long-term success because of Darth Malgus as the mascot, as numbers have steadily decreased from there. At the time of release, Star Wars The Old Republic had a collector's edition that included a Darth Malgus statue, which now today is an exclusive item that goes for upwards of $200 in certain marketplaces. And this higher price does indicate that there is still some interest among collectors. The average Star Wars The Old Republic Steam player count, by the way, it is also available as a separate launcher, so some of these numbers are not a full picture of the player base, but the Steam numbers over the past 12 months has been hovering around 4,500, while there have been a few spikes surrounding updates. As you can probably tell, Darth Malgus' purpose in the real world is definitely complicated, and there are quite a few influences and reasons to lean one way or another on all these questions. But I hope you found this interesting, and I want to leave you with this one question. Are the devs only keeping Darth Malgus around because of his popularity, or because he is genuinely an important character to the narrative?